Well, hey leaders, what is stealing your time and what's costing your team? In today's episode, we're calling out 5 of the biggest time suckers that keep leaders stuck in survival mode. That's our focus on today's episode of the Slingshot Group Podcast. And I'm joined by 2 exceptional and very productive leaders on our team, Toni McEwan, our VP of Nonprofit, and Phil Bowdle, our VP of Marketing. And this topic is one that hits close to home for a lot of leaders. We're pulled in so many directions that we end up trying to do everything and not doing any of it all that well. So, Toni and Phil, how has this shown up in your own life and the leaders you work with?
It's a great question. And I would say for me, setting aside some really critical boundaries and healthy rhythms is the best way to sustain my own health through those busy seasons.
Healthy rhythm. That's a big one. What about you, Phil?
What comes to mind for me is every time I talk to a leader or feel for myself the question of just how are you, the first word that just leaps off of my mind is busy. Time suckers, these things that we're talking about, they show up so commonly in our own lives and all of those around us, because everywhere we look, there's something or someone looking to take the most precious commodity that we have, which is our time. So I think that's why this conversation today is going to be so helpful.
I'm sure there are leaders listening right now that are feeling guilty for listening to a podcast and not dealing with their big, long to-do list. And I just want to say I'm proud of you for doing it because you're investing in productivity, and that will be like compound interest. Because time isn't just a schedule, it's the most accurate reflection of your values. And so a value for you if you're listening today is you're a learner, is you want to be more productive. Every minute spent in reaction mode is a minute stolen from your mission. That's why avoiding these common time traps that we're going to talk about today that leaders face is so important. So let's start with something that almost every leader can relate to, and that is your inbox. You sit down with a plan for the day, and the next thing you know, it's 2 p.m. and you've done nothing but reply to emails and play defense. Toni, why is inbox overload such a sneaky drain on a leader's time, and what can we do about it? And I just want to say, this is something I personally struggle with. So Toni, help.
Well, I don't know that I have all the answers, but this is something I've certainly had to navigate through, 25 years of inbox management in different organizations and seasons of my career. And, I think there's a lot of different theories out there, but the reality is we each manage our inbox differently. And I think while it often can feel productive to get that down to 0 or whatever that magic number might be in your mind on an everyday basis, the reality is the inbox management is something we need to manage and not let it manage us. And so some things that I've learned, some helpful tips and tricks are setting aside certain times of the day. For me, it's the morning and late afternoon and probably midday, 3 times to really check in, block the calendar and be heads down. I find that when I'm dipping in and out of it, I'm not productive because I'm of multiple minds. I think also too, using technology and different systems to our advantage can be really helpful, like thinking about batch send or reminders, setting tasks for yourselves. Someone recently said, and I love this, that your email shouldn't be your main to-do list. It's actually someone else's priorities. So when we let someone else's priority that shows up in our inbox drive our work, we're not being strategic, we're being reactive. And so those are just a few considerations, a few tips that I've learned along the way.
Toni, you just juked me with it's somebody else's to-do list, because often I will use my email inbox as a to-do list, and I'm a little OCD. That will not surprise the other people sitting with me on this podcast. And so I'm a 0 inbox guy, or if I can't get it to 0, I want it kind of in one window, if you know what I mean. But I would suggest to everybody listening is learn to love the unsubscribe button, because we end up subscribed to so many things that fill our inbox. And also we're living in this amazingly exciting age of AI. And there are so many assistants we can use now to draft emails. I'm not suggesting you let them write emails for you. Maybe you do, but at least drafts, at least to give you a head start. And remember, it's quite respectable to not respond to an email until the next calendar day. That's okay. I think if it gets further than a day, then you're falling into the category of an unresponsive leader, right? But if you can respond the next calendar day, it doesn't mean you have to let email run your life. But Toni, those are really, really helpful tips. So next one up after dealing with the inbox overload is an interesting one, because I'm also reformed in this area too. It used to be a big issue for me. Time sucker number 2, it may surprise you, is people pleasing. And it's easy to justify saying yes to everything because it feels kind. But for leaders, overcommitting is one of the most dangerous ways to stay busy and distracted. So Phil, many leaders genuinely want to help. And let's be honest, we all want to be liked. But that desire to make others happy can trap us into saying yes to things we shouldn't. How have you seen people pleasing quietly derail leaders?
Well, I know it's quietly derailed myself over the years and stuff. I don't know. I'm a struggling. I don't know if it's reformed. I'm continually trying to reform myself in this because it's such a challenge for me and for so many people. Because, like you said, we want to be liked. We want to care for those around us. That's our hope. That's our desire. And I've certainly had to learn some lessons in this area the hard way. Part of it where I learned it is in church communications, where everybody needs something from you at all times. And a people-pleasing heart and mindset can get really dangerous. And because you're constantly not working for what's most effective, what's the smartest thing to do, what does our mission require of us? No, that's not the filter. The filter is, what's the person on the other side of me going to think of me after I have to tell them yes or no, or how I respond to this? So it can be a dangerous, dangerous trap. And I think that the phrase that kept on coming to mind for me as I wrestled with it is, the fear of being disliked is going to cripple me from being effective. Because at the end of the day, people pleasing is I want to make a decision, or I want to do something in a way that people will like me. And the opposite of that is they won't. Because as leaders, we all know you don't sign up for leadership without knowing that you're going to be misunderstood, that not everybody's going to agree with you. Yes and amen to both of you on this. We know that that's the life. So trying to make everybody happy is actually a recipe for making no one happy, especially ourselves. I think at the end of the day, people pleasing shouldn't be the goal. It can't be our destination. But empathy with effectiveness can be. Firm but kind can be. We have to be willing to be misunderstood. We have to be willing to say the hard no or the hard yes, whatever it is, and filter that through, not the filter of, is this going to lead towards somebody liking me or not? Because, at the end of the day, I think we've learned too, sometimes the hardest thing we have to do is say no to something. But around the corner of that, sometimes our no is actually a yes, a better yes for somebody else. Or it might be protecting our mission. It might be protecting something else going on. So if we aren't willing to let down our desire to be liked, it's going to be really, really hard for us to be effective in the work that we're called to.
Yeah. People pleasing is a close team member of conflict avoidance. And when we push conflict down the road, it, as we know, it only gets worse. And Phil, you've been in roles that have put you right in the bullseye of having to work out whether to deliver truth or deliver the answer people want to hear. I mean, communications in a church environment, marketing in a in a company environment. Toni, I'd be interested in your take on this because you have served in the marketplace, leadership in the marketplace. Now you're working with a lot of nonprofits, faith-forward for-profits. You have a spouse who is a leader in the church. How does people-pleasing show up in marketplace differently than in the faith-based space, or does it?
Honestly, I don't think it does show up differently. I think one of the tactics I learned early on is to ask clarifying questions. So what I mean by that, curiosity is one of our values at Slingshot, but as a also people pleaser and a high achiever myself, clarification on deadlines. So while it might feel like a time suck, we could say, great, you need this from me. Let me contract back with you to say, can I get that to you by Monday? Or is it urgent or is it important? And if I can make space for that, absolutely I will. The earliest I can get that to you is a week from Friday. Is that acceptable enough? And there is a difference, I would say, in the marketplace where I saw that language kind of more, that contractual negotiation of time language being more commonly used, because there was maybe a bit more of respect for a full calendar as opposed to, man, the ministry is everything and I'm going to do whatever I can at the expense of myself and my own personal time. And so that might be a bit of a nuance, but I would often contract back. And that's how I've kind of learned how to use time in a different way to get clarification, to set deadlines, to then determine whether or not it's a good yes or no.
That's really helpful because we've found that leadership health, team health, rises and falls on clarity of expectations. And so clarifying that, those things, I think is so important when it comes to this time suck of people pleasing. Okay, let's move on to number 3. This next one might be the most common trap we see in coaching and hiring, and that's lack of focus. It's not always about doing too much. Sometimes it's about doing the wrong things. We call it the productivity trap. This is where you mistake productive functionality for momentum. If you suspect you're caught in this trap, it might be time to call a timeout and reset your team or workflow. We see organizations prioritizing busy work, and it can mask aimlessness. Motion can fake direction. Hustle isn't all bad, but it's not a destination. Beyond busyness, as leaders, we need to do things like schedule a 10-minute pause each day to ask, is what I'm doing meaningful? Keep a to-don't list beside your to-do list, as well as us individually as leaders. We need to be focusing on productive work. Toni and Phil, how does a lack of focus show up in leaders, and why is it so important that leaders identify their unique contribution and hire or staff to their gaps? Let's start with you, Phil.
Yeah, I think this is a common one because it doesn't only impact us as leaders, it actually impacts us as organizations. We kind of can fall into the same time sucker for both of us. Starting with leaders, I think of a treadmill. A treadmill is a great way to move fast, but it doesn't mean you're going anywhere, right? You can spend a lot of energy and effort on something and not actually get real far. And that's kind of the case when you feel like you're trying to do everything. And, the phrase I always think of is you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And so when we as leaders get a sense of feeling like everything in front of us is something for us to do, we can fall into that trap so quickly of losing our focus and losing our ability to do anything well. The same thing happens with organizations. When we lose track of our mission as our filter for what we should or shouldn't do, and we say we could do it, I guess we should do it. Well, maybe not. Same thing for us as leaders, same thing for us as organizations. Not everything is for you to own and to do. And Tim, I see this all the time with leaders that are lowering their bar, lowering their level of their unique contribution because they're trying to do everything. Instead of saying, here's the unique things that I can own that move our mission and move our team forward. And I'm going to hire around me key leaders that can worry about it, so I don't have to be on this thing. I don't have to do it. Somebody else can actually do that and probably do it better. So I need to surround myself with the right people instead of trying to think that I have infinite time to do all the things. So that shapes how we lead organizations, that shapes how we lead ourselves, and it dramatically shapes how we lead teams and build teams around us, around the strengths of our leaders, so that we're not trying to do everything well and we end up doing nothing well.
Yeah. Toni?
As we're chatting and having this conversation, I'm reminded of a loving team member of ours who called me out yesterday and just said, let me take that from you because that shouldn't be yours to own. And sometimes we need other people that are in our corner, in our executive teams, in our leadership teams, who are looking at us from the outside saying, you've got these other strategic priorities. Let me take that from you because frankly, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And that's, Phil, exactly what you were saying. I think sometimes there's this unbiased expectation that we need to be, the Swiss Army knife of leadership. We need to be able to do it all, have all the tools, be expert in using all the tools. And the reality is we weren't designed that way. And so when we think about what we can versus what we should, and having others speak into those kinds of things, it also allows us to empower and delegate others. And it allows us to be, to Phil's point, more effective at what we should be prioritizing to do well.
Yeah. Role clarity is so important when it comes to focus, realizing how what we do contributes directly to the mission, and then realizing that the mission is way bigger than any one person. And I'm speaking to leaders right now about releasing the mission to the team that you have gathered around you. That's how we scale. That's how we grow. We often say when you hire to your weaknesses, your organization will reflect your strengths. And so it's realizing that self-awareness is such a major value in healthy leadership. It's also a massive value in healthy teams. Team awareness and people's strengths and challenges help us focus on the right things, and then remembering what's important now and that there's going to be a new day tomorrow. The sun's going to rise tomorrow. We don't have to do everything today. And so it's focusing on the right things today and then focusing on the right things tomorrow. A great mentor said to me early in my leadership, hey, have a to-do list that says, what are the 10 things I need to do today or the world will fall apart? And take care of those first. And then often in our coaching, we'll tell leaders, hey, work out what the most important things are to your direct report. What are the things that hit their radar? Take care of those things first, and then take care of the things that energize you. So often we get trapped in this time suck, lack of focus, because we're not willing to eat the frog, right? We're not willing to deal with the tough thing first. And so what's important now? Let's get it done. Let's move on to the next thing. And the next thing is number 4. Let's talk about control. It's one of those things that feels like the answer, but more often than not, it's a trap. The pursuit of control is actually what makes us lose it. Literally, whether it's overthinking, micromanaging, or just trying to carry it all alone. Control's an illusion, and chasing it can become a major time and energy drain. Toni, again, you've worked closely with leaders who are stuck in this cycle. What have you seen happen when leaders try to control too much? And why does that effort to hold it all together often end up hurting both them and their teams?
Yeah, I think it's important to identify what's behind that. And a lot of times it's fear of some kind, right? Fear of not being delivered the way I would have done it, fear of expectations, fear of back to the people pleasing, someone else's perception of it. And so in my experience, when I've seen particularly executive leaders, CEOs, even mid-level managers operate in this way, I always question, well, what's behind that? What's driving that control? And I think the reality is when we lead, and I'll put myself in this category, when I lead out of a place of control or fear or trying to micromanage, what I'm not doing, I'm not giving trust to my team. We're not empowering the people that we've entrusted to this mission or this role, right? Because we're trying to do too many things, but not only that, we're trying to do it in a certain way. And so that striving for perfection often delays progress or advancement of mission. Healthy leaders who truly recognize that they are temporary, we are temporary, healthy leaders who call up younger, more junior staff underneath them and empower them and bring them alongside, open up the opportunities for them to not only learn, but for them to fail. And I think failure is a really important part of leadership. We need to learn how to fail and show that it's okay to fail, and then to pick ourselves back up and try something new. And so healthy leaders really grow when they create space and empowerment by letting go of control.
Yeah, we've said on previous podcast episodes that we feel like one of the greatest statements a leader can make in this cultural moment is, I don't know. I don't know what to do next. It's admitting that we don't have the answers. And that opens up the room for new ideas, for collaboration, for risk taking. Toni, how do you help a leader shift from control to confidence in their team, especially in times where maybe things are slower, maybe there's challenges? How do you coach a leader that direction?
Man, that's such a good question, Tim. I think it's a little bit of pulling back and taking the bird's eye view and using that opportunity to take a beat and look at more of the strategic benefits of it. And so a lot of that is looking at their bench, looking at their leadership underneath them, and asking the question, like we've said here, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So I think a lot of it is bringing that perspective to say, to your top 10 list, what are my strategic priorities of what I must do now, or else the world will fall apart. And I think when we put a different lens and a different filter on it, and also encourage our leaders to look at who they've brought alongside them and perhaps what areas of development or specific skills and interests those leaders have, we can then start to put together some practical steps in place to then truly make that investment of time, because it does require more time. It requires more time to coach and train others. And if we have that time now, this is the time to begin laying that foundation for the future.
Yeah. I think part of it too, Toni, is giving away leadership. You know, sometimes it causes you to realize maybe you don't have all the right people in the room and you need to look at how to grow the team. But I look at our exec team that I'm privileged to lead at Slingshot, and each member of that team can lead out that team in different areas of expertise at different times. And to have that freedom and to open your hands to release the leadership in the room to lead. You know, I said to a exec friend of mine when I stepped into my current role at Slingshot, I said, what's been the secret to your success as you've led really successful teams? He said, Tim, it's pretty simple. He said, it's just hire the right leaders and let them lead. Phil, before we move on, do you have anything to add to that time suck?
Yeah, just
but don't suck the time.
One thing I would say is we are most susceptible to control the things that we do really well. And so we quickly, but unintentionally, become the lid to our team or to our organizations, because we can control the thing, because we see all the things that we know we would do differently or that we could do better. And I think that, you know, we've all been there. We've probably all done it at some level. And I think for us, if we can target not being the most controlling, but being the best coach, move from control to coach, that is the posture that the teams that look to us for leadership want. They don't want a boss. They don't want a controller or a micromanager. They want a coach to learn from, to be able to encourage, to see things that they don't see, to help them be the best they can be. So if we can change our effort, channel some of that effort we could put into control and move it towards being the best coach that we can be, we're going to see our teams flourish and thrive. And we're going to feel a little bit less weight on our shoulders, feeling like we can control something that we can't actually control.
Yeah. It's always a tension to manage, isn't it? Because I have always loved collaborative leadership, and I'm all about coaching leaders to continue to grow and step up. But there are times, and the two of you have been in the room when it's needed to happen, where I've been pushed into a corner where I have to act like the leader of the team. and make the call. And so that's really interesting, Phil, that you bring that up, because it's a tension to manage, but so many leaders fall into the trap of not managing that tension, and it becomes unhealthy in either direction. You either act too much like a boss, not enough like a coach, or too much like a coach, and you don't make a decision. And so it's a really interesting tension. That's great.
Well, and it
So
goes back to even the need to go back to number 3, which is lack of focus, which can be a time sucker. Control is one thing, but focus is another. So when we as leaders can give give focus back, our target back, our mission back, like remind people of that, then we can let go of the control of all the things. But that's a responsibility that especially our CEOs and senior leaders that feel the weight of of what you're talking about. That's where sometimes we can coach our way towards pointing them towards that clarity that we all need to help equip our teams to do the best work they can.
Right. That's what we all want. So our final time sucker is one most leaders feel every single week, and that's being reactive. When your calendar is driven by emergencies instead of priorities, you feel like you're putting out fires all the time. It's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture. So Phil, again, what's the cost when leaders live in reactive mode, and how can they start building in margin for proactive strategic leadership?
Yeah, I think the cost is chaos. There's a chaos cycle that kind of happens when you live in a reactive mindset. Tim, I've learned from you when you talk about when you're trying to take vacation, you say, "Hey, I'm going to be on defense, not offense." You're saying I've done as much offense as I can in the work that I'm doing to be able to protect the little bit of time I can to play defense. Well, I've been proactive with my leadership and my work. Now I'm just going to try to create a little bit of room for being able to be reactive as needed. So this isn't a one or the other. This is a tension, like we've talked about, to manage. But when we are constantly in that reactive workflow, whether it's ourselves as leaders or the teams around us, it so quickly creates a chaos cycle for us. I learned this personally early on when I did a time audit. I don't know if either of you have done that, where you just go through. What I did is I just added a second calendar to my calendar program, and I just tracked not what I thought I was going to be spending my time on, but what I actually spent my time on.
Ouch.
And ouch is the word. It hurt. Because what I thought happened was not the reality of what was really happening. I was losing time in unnecessary meetings and distractions and reactions and so many things that I would say were very much reactionary instead of proactive. And so looking at auditing your time might be a start for some of you to say how much of this is proactive, how much of this is reactive. I read a study recently of Harvard Business Review that indicated that 85% of leadership teams spend less than 1 hour a month on strategy. Ooh. Less than 1 hour a month. I don't know what their time audit would look like for most of those leadership teams, but that's a lot of time reacting, and maybe not near as much time as what they should be doing to look proactively into the future and stuff. So I think for all of us, we feel this tension, and we should have moments where we need to respond respond and react to a urgent need that pops up. But when that becomes not a thing that happens every once in a while, but a thing that happens all the time, we lose our ability to do our best and most meaningful work. And we've got to find time to work on the ministry, not just in it, or on the team, not just in it and stuff. So it takes moments to get out of that chaos and take a breather and know, okay, how am I being proactive with my week? Because what's often at stake is, if you aren't, who is? For us as leaders, that's our role. That's our responsibility. That's on our shoulders. And I've felt that before, where I'm saying, I'm not doing a good enough job at that. So if I'm not worried about it, who is? Oh, that's me. Okay. I got to get out of this chaos cycle and get more proactive in the work that God's called me to.
Yeah. We've worked with organizations where leadership has taken email away from some of their top leaders and had their email inboxes managed, and things that require their attention is elevated to them, and things that aren't or doesn't require their attention is responded to. And it's been really interesting to follow the progress of that kind of work and the focus that it provides. Toni, in nonprofit space, for-profit space, how does this play out, this whole reactive mode?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's seasons where organizations, markets are going in crisis, right? And so a crisis can create an opportunity for strategic shift in priorities. And I think it's worth naming that when you're in a crisis season or a, buckle down crunch season, there will realistically be more of a reactive posture. But if we're leading healthy teams and healthy organizations, and we're kind of running the business, if I can call it that, running the ministry operationally sound, then this should be a priority for us to take time. And I think it's important rhythm to build into our own practice and our organization's practice. And I stepped into this role a few months ago, and because of the permission, Tim, that you gave me and some of the creative idea thinking that you gave me, Phil, I've decided to set aside a day a month to do content creation and be strategic, where I don't have meetings. I don't have planned meetings, let's say, right? There's always the tyranny of the urgent to be available, but to get in a different space, a different context, a different environment to allow there to be creative, strategic thinking. And I think we have to sometimes force those things on our calendars, right? It's important, though. It's such important work because it allows us, I think, to actually be more productive.
Yeah, that's great. So in summary, we don't wake up hoping to waste time today, right? Actually, once a week we should. It's called Sabbath, and remember that God brings the increase, but we don't drift towards effectiveness. We need to stay aware of the traps and triggers that suck our time. And I'd encourage you listening to this podcast to actually force rank these 5 time suckers and realize what the top one or top issue is for you, and then prioritize how you deal with these and how you stay aware of these, because awareness is 90% of winning the battle. And your remarkable mission deserves remarkable focus, just like it deserves a remarkable team. You are called to more than managing a calendar or putting out fires. You can lead with vision, wisdom, and renewed energy with the right mindset, boundaries, and support. So, Toni and Phil, thank you both for this honest and practical conversation. You've given leaders the insight and tools to take their time back. And we know we've got leaders of teams listening. We've got team members listening. We've got those in transition listening. And this is really helpful to audit this as you're perhaps getting ready for a job transition and you get to reinvent yourself as a leader, or also as you might be interviewing people for a role on your team. You can talk about these time sucks and what strategies they have, or ask them what their awareness is of the things that suck their time. This can be taken from so many different angles. And if you found today's episode helpful, would you hit subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone on your team? And if you're ready for more support, our team would love to help you or your organization move from survival mode to strategic impact. And that might just be methods or practical tips for how to overcome some of these time suckers, or it might be finding leaders on your team that fill the gaps and can help move productivity in your mission forward. So head to slingshotgroup.org to start a conversation with us. We love conversations. And until next time, stay curious and reach for the remarkable.